am Lori Ryan, honored to be filling in here for Brian. I miss him too, but we are going to have fun. We have a packed show. Today is March 25th, 2026. And this is the last time. I think we're going to have those weird time zone things where you're confused about when the show is. Because next week, I think we're going to be back in sync to what we're used to for time zones. Super excited. Today, we're going to talk about Beyond the IT Ticket. And we are joined by Josh Lemon, Senior Director, Total Rewards. And he's going to show us all how he's been vibe coding and doing cool stuff. And he is not naturally a coder, IT guy, and having a huge impact on his team and his organization. And I'm so excited for everyone here to meet him. Now, please, please, please join the conversation. Say hello. Say where you're from. Tell us about your weather. Share what's on your mind. We really hope this will be interactive. We want to hear your questions. Join our conversation. Now, anybody? Hope everybody's having a good day. All right. So you can see us. Where are all the places you can see us? On LinkedIn, which may be where you're watching right now. On YouTube. You can also see us and find us on Spotify. Tally will share the link to the recording there as well. And also being here, guess what? You earn credits. So Tally will share your codes. Thank you to our good friends from Rocket Mortgage. We got CPE codes courtesy of ERC, GMS, HRII, HRCI, CHRM, all courtesy from our friends. That's a lot of initials to spit out really fast, but you know what those codes are. Now, it is time. Oh, they gave me extra responsibility today. I get to play videos. So now, let's hear it. We're going to go into our breaking news. All right. So if you got a new job, we want to celebrate with you, right? Tell us about it. Or if you just hired someone new to your team, let's celebrate them. Or if you're looking, let us know of that too. We want to help you fill those roles. We want to bring people together, right? And that's why we're here today. Now, onto a little more serious side of things, right? We're going to get an update on the Middle East. Raj is in for Julia today. She's leads their crisis management team, and she has an update on the Middle East. All right, Raj, hello.
Hi, Laurie. Hi, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I'm sure you have been incredibly busy over this last series of events happening. Would love to hear high-profile things, practical advice for our folks watching today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Julia last week gave a roundup of what we're seeing. So what I'll do today is just spend a few minutes and talking about some of the more practical considerations for people in the region. Now, the situation across the Middle East is still very dynamic and still very changeable. And as you said, our crisis management team at Fragment, we are continuing to monitor and see sort of continuous updates and changes. They're monitoring things like immigration concessions, consular updates, airspace closures, and this is all sort of changing very fast still. Now, before we go into sort of the discussion and sort of what we're seeing on sort of a practical perspective, I did just want to say that I hope everybody who is currently in the region, that they are safe and that they are doing okay. We understand that this is an incredibly stressful and difficult time for people there. Right, so what I'm going to do now is just talk through 5 areas that we at Fragment, in terms of our crisis support, are providing assistance with organisations and individuals who are in region. Now, the first stage when it comes to crisis management really is about identifying the population. Who is the workforce that is impacted? And this is really about ensuring you have visibility. So, it's those organizations that are or have already sort of understood who's out there and who are they with. And one of the biggest kind of considerations at the moment is not just employees and potential dependents that may be sponsored as a dependent of that employee, but it's also it could be parents who are visiting an employee. There could be maids. There could be all these there are other people that may fall outside of immigration policy scope. But actually, when it comes to a crisis, GM teams quickly find that they are having to consider options for all. So really understanding who your people are, where they are, and that goes, that speaks to things like nationality. Do they hold dual nationality? What visas do they hold? And again, this might not just be work permits, but it could be Schengen visas or visit visas for other locations. All of this information in this know your population first stage is incredibly important. And again, we've been doing a lot of work in this space with clients and organizations over the last 3.5 weeks, I think now that we are in. Now, the second stage of crisis management really speaks to the strategy. And this is where, organizations may do things and may take different decisions when it comes to crises. So once you have identified who is impacted, who's the workforce that is impacted, the next step really is understanding what is actually possible, what do your employees want, and obviously with a crisis, first and foremost, it's always about security and safety of people. But quickly after that, for organizations, it really is also understanding where can people move if they want to move, where they may retain the right to work, and if people are choosing to stay. And that is something that we're seeing, I think, in this situation in particular. We're seeing a large number of people across the region who, yes, they're aware of the situation, but are choosing to stay in place. So again, understanding what that means from a communication perspective. Are they in regular contact? Are they monitoring embassy updates? So again, really understanding who's there and what's next. Now, I think this, in terms of some of the strategy discussions that we've been having with some of our clients in this bucket, this second area, this analysis of population, there are a number of strategies. So that for those that are looking to mobilize, oftentimes it's about getting foreign nationals back to their country of nationality. So Brits back to the UK, Americans back to the US, etc. Now, in this situation, because there are a number of locations impacted and there are a number of tricky nationalities that are caught up within the region, that's not always possible. And so a lot of the work that we're doing in this analysis stage is also understanding where can we get people who may hold a nationality from within the region that still are looking to leave, or having a Russian national that may not be able to return to Russia, and where else can they go and retain the right to work. So again, this is really about that strategy and understanding.
May I ask you a question about the strategy then? As this drags on, like you say, like over 3 weeks, is it changing in terms of how people are looking at things or what they want to do, or what are you seeing?
I think so. And then Julia and I speak about this quite a lot. I think we noticed that, unlike other crises, firstly, we're not seeing that large scale lift and shift of entire populations as we did perhaps, with the Ukraine war. for instance. So we're not, it feels different. Now, the analysis is still happening. And I think in that analysis stage, the real tricky thing is about where you have either a mixed nationality family or you have a trickier nationality and they are wanting to leave the region. The kind of the strategy and the sequencing of getting them to safety and then protecting their right to work and business continuity can be quite complex. And that we've had a number of examples where there are exit permit requirements for certain locations like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait that needs to be taken into account. There are transit routes. Oftentimes with airspace closures, you can't get an end-to-end commercial route. So again, understanding that sequencing and factoring in all of those immigration requirements and assessments along the way is incredibly important.
And then I just heard from you too, it's really case by case. Like every single case has unique factors. It's not
exactly that. So and this is why, and when we do crisis stage, and this actually comes through to the third bucket, which is executing on that strategy. So where where you want to send people or where people are choosing to self-evacuate, as we're seeing, oftentimes is what's happening at the moment. Exactly that. It's about understanding for that individual or their family unit. And again, where there are individuals with family members or with dependents, is about doing an analysis for that family unit as a whole. And if they're a mixed nationality family and the spouse and children don't hold the same kind of residence rights as the main employee, it's about thinking, well, where can they go as a family? Because in times of crises, typically families don't want to be separated and they want to stay together. So absolutely, it's all about that case by case analysis and understanding. And as this has gone on, there are some additional things to think about. And another big area of consideration is where people are leaving the region, to also think about the permits that they may be on in the Middle East and how to protect that status if it's coming up to expiry. So, and there are places that are announcing some concessions where people may be outside of the region, so that their status is protected should they, when they're ready to return. And the last two buckets is, so that the next one is once people have if they have chosen to mobilize out of the region, is really understanding compliance and tracking. And this is incredibly important. So getting people out and securing their safety is one thing, but once they're in another location, well, are there immigration requirements there? Can they work there? Are there in-country registration requirements if they're there as a foreign national? Are you tracking the day that they entered? There will be other wider global mobility factors to think about: tax, permanent establishment, etc. And remote working is a big focus at the moment.
So I think too now about what this could mean for budgets, for relocations and
it's a real, again, one that I think has become more of a talking point with this crisis than I've seen with previous ones, because it's such an unpredictable situation. I mean, we've had more and more clients talk about, do they pay things like hardship funds or hardship allowances for people who are deciding to remain? If people are looking to get to a third location, sequencing the number of steps that they need to take to actually obtain a visa. They might be in a location where they're only there as a visitor, but they're trying to get to the UK, for instance, from Turkey. Well, it might involve a couple of applications to get from end to end. So there are absolutely additional considerations when it comes to costs. And that's why in those first two steps, knowing your people and understanding what your strategy is really critical, because that from there you can flow the cost predictions and analysis.
And you don't want it to take too long either to spend all this time trying to figure out what they are. You want it to be right at your fingertips to be able to see that.
Absolutely. And then this sort of really then just feeds into sort of the final area, which, we sort of see this as quite cyclical, but the final area is really about that post-crisis review, right? Or an after-action review. And we're in a time and an age where things remain very unpredictable. I think it's probably one of the only certainties is that things are unpredictable. So really, once people have landed in another location, or once things have calmed down, understanding how things were dealt with, where were there areas that perhaps policy could be tightened up? Do you need to think about frameworks for crisis? Have you done an after-action review? And all of this will then feed back into making your program stronger and more resilient and more agile, as and when there will, the next uncertain event happens, and
which there will be,
unfortunately,
We so appreciate you, Raj. And I hope, everyone at home now or at the office will share a heart for your appreciation for you, the like button, the applause button. We are so grateful for you taking time to be with us. And maybe we'll check in you at the end. I did create a crisis management type app because I was so curious to try to understand it and I digest it. Maybe you can offer feedback by the end of the show.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Have a good one. Now, everyone, it is time for our global mobility updates. And I am so excited to welcome colleague Meredith Morris. She is amazing. So again, hit that like button, that heart button, and the applause button. We got a wrong video going, and that's okay. So we are going to do a little dance to bring Meredith in, but even though she is talking about something quite serious today. Meredith, come on in. Hello,
and there
Meredith.
it was. There was my video.
Woo-hoo, we got it to work.
Yes. I know. That was great. Yeah. Hey, everyone out there. Yeah, that was such a great update from Raj. Like really played in nicely into, what I'll be talking about today. And so, as all of us know that are in mobility, there's so many different moving pieces. And it was interesting, Lori, because I know like you used AI to come up with like a crisis management, type plan. You may talk more about it later, but many of these companies, they have these types of, programs already in place. They prep for this on a continuous basis. They've got their protocol, they've got all of that put together. But then, just like Raj is talking about, okay, all of these organizations have been, trying to mobilize people out of these specific regions in the Middle East. There's other extenuating circumstances. So it's not just about the visa and immigration. It's not just about what country are you putting them in or where are you going to place them or how can they continue, to do what they were sent there to do. But then what if they decide to exit completely? And there may have been, employees and moves that were in progress when all of this took place. So today I'm actually going to be talking about household goods movings and, what that means. And so I had a great conversation with one of our partners. That's a partner of Benivo's that supports our clients. So I talked to Clay Poe with Interconnex. Clay, if you're out there, thank you for the info and thank Alex too. And I know we've got a few others out there that are in that specific area that support, the household goods and doing these international type shipments. So I saw Ray Abbott with Tippets on. So, hey, Ray. So please, you guys, like put it in from the corporate perspective as well. But what we're seeing is that, shipments are basically stuck. So if your employees were moving out of that specific region, if they had, hey, Dana, if they had a shipment that was in process or in storage or, at the port, those shipments are stuck. So the Strait of Hormuz is basically a controlled access point right now, and it's difficult to get these items moving. And so one of the things that a lot of organizations need to prepare their employees for is that it's not just super easy to go grab a container off a vessel or out of a port. And so when you see these shipping containers, and maybe many have, there's thousands of them on these vessels and they are stacked. And so it's not like you can go, oh, hey, XYZ, let me go on this vessel and just like pull this shipment off.
Right. Not happening.
It doesn't not happen. It doesn't work like that. And the other complexity that's happened within that region, and what I'm understanding is that, you could try to go around and find other routes, but then some of the other routes that make better sense, you have still pirating going on by Somalis. And so that has been impacting the movement because these ships, these vessels, they don't want to get attacked by Somali pirates and lose their shipments. So these are some of the complexities. So I know companies are having to make other arrangements. That means additional temporary housing. They may be giving allowances for, families to buy a few items to get there. But the big message that was basically sent from, this side from the employee experience perspective is it's going to be patience. Nothing's going to come overnight. And to really just know that the situation will eventually work out. But on the flip side of it, there could be additional costs that companies incur from demurrage or storage. There may be assessments coming from these different vessels. And so those charges, a lot of these companies have not seen coming through just yet, but there is potential for additional fees to be added on to shipments. So, that would happen in a lot of cases, but now we're in basically a war zone. And that leads to the next thing. So besides, we're talking about cost. So now we have to make other arrangements for our people, which these companies have been doing, and everybody has jumped in, boom, like we do in global mobility.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that these employees need to know is that their shipment's not covered. So if that vessel is taken down, there is no insurance coverage for it. It's not covered under war or acts of God. And so these are some of the things, and the insurance rates are starting to spike on these shipments, and they've been going up. So, those are just some of the areas from the household goods side. I don't know if any of our audience wants to chime in.
Yeah.
Right? Any of our corporates, but yeah, that's what we're seeing. So it's an active zone right now, but I feel like companies, know how to deal with this. Hopefully employees pack their patience, understand that these are unusual circumstances. And, our partners that service us and service our clients are also, giving forth that same type of service to theirs as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Meredith. Really important information, right? And that's the reflection of what is happening today and what we're all dealing with and experiencing. And thoughts with everyone, because I just can't imagine the idea of my personal belongings being in that situation and not knowing when or if I'll see them. And
it's really interesting though, because I was at an event on Thursday, and I know every situation is different. Like you said it, Lori. I mean, every situation is different. Every family is different. Every company operates different. But, I asked some of, my corporate peers out there and friends, I'm like, how are you dealing with this situation? They're like, we didn't pull anybody out. We're just monitoring. And so I heard that a lot. Others, they gave options too. So I feel like, a lot of companies, they each had their own way of handling the situation. But knowing of certain logistics that, is interesting to hear the mix of how, they were doing things, especially for those that have rigs and deep water drilling out in the middle of the ocean. They were pulling people off of those, though, those are prime hit zones, hate to tell you, but they were evacuating them and they were putting them in country. So from offshore to on land. So yeah, it's been crazy times, but that's what mobility is. That's what we do out there. That's what we sign up for. That's why we love our jobs, because it never sits still, right?
And it's caring for people. It's showing that we care through all the hardest things.
The hardest time. Yeah, Exactly. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you again for being here. And I hope everybody watching, again, show Meredith some love. That like button, the heart button, the applause button, because it is time to move into our main part of the show. And today we are going to be talking to Josh Lemon, again, Senior Director, Total Rewards at Resideo, and just creative, innovative, passionate human who I can't wait for you all to meet.
Bye, everyone. I'm looking forward to it.
Hello, Josh.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me.
So happy to see you here. I know I did like a brief little intro, but how about if you take a few seconds and maybe share a little bit more?
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. So I'm Josh Lemon. I'm the Senior Director of Global Total Rewards at Resideo. Just a little bit about what I have responsibilities for. So we are in a little over 30 countries globally, and have all the broad-based compensation and benefits programs, basically responsibilities for all of that, all of our presence globally.
And you and I actually bonded. Well, we're both here in the Twin Cities, which has an incredibly vibrant, exciting AI community, but also over a love of vibe coding. And neither of us comes from a coding background. And I think I was so blown away by what you've been able to build for fun and work related. I just wanted to make sure everybody got a feel for what is possible. And so as we go through everything today, I want you to think in the back of your head, like, wow, if they can do it, I can do this too. And so I think I want to start the conversation off, Josh, with what is vibe coding?
Yeah, so vibe coding is basically just talking about what it is that you're familiar with and working towards an end goal, maybe an application or something that you're trying to work on. You don't need to know how to code. I don't know Python. I don't know CSS or any of these other programs, but I do know how to describe the pain points that I'm feeling. And if you can do that, you can end up vibe coding.
And how did you find out about it? And how did you get started?
So I am a little bit of a YouTube junkie, and the algorithm has me pegged, and so I basically started following these types of things and started watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and through following different things on YouTube and just going out and playing with it, I've learned how to do this vibe coding.
You touched on a key word there, playing, right?
Yeah.
And so what was your first, like, hey, I'm going to try to build something moment? Is that something you can share or talk about?
Yeah, actually. So I ended up building something called mealtastic.net. So after I ended up deciding that, vibe coding was something that I wanted to try out, I ended up saying, okay, let's give this a go. And so one of the things that we like to do on a weekly basis is do menu planning. And so I ended up coming up with an application that will allow me to search for recipes. And actually, the way this works, it actually creates the recipes. So it uses AI to generate the recipes. And based on whatever it generates, I can add it to my meal plan and just say, okay, Wednesday or Thursday as an additional thing, I'd like to make chocolate chip cookies. Now there are some little things that aren't perfect, right? This is a picture of a cake, but I can end up going back and revisiting my recipe and looking at, it's not perfect. Honestly, I haven't played around with this for a lot, but proof of concept wise, I was able to put this together. One of the things that I did that I really like is I ended up making it so that I could actually store my own library of recipes. So some of the recipes that I have in here, I just added personally. So it's a nice way for me to store recipes that I already use. Here's one for grilled gumbo skewers that's a real picture of something that I ended up making. And I can go back and revisit it using the application. I can plan my recipes around that. And then it can also generate a shopping list for me based on what I put in there. I can end up clearing whatever I had in there before and generate a new list based on what I put on my meal plan. But this was really the proof of concept. Like, can I do this? And once I ended up building it, I ended up saying, well, yes, I can.
And so that would be your advice to people, right? Like, just get in there and try anything.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, do something that is really low risk, right? You want to do something as you're kind of playing around with it that you're just like, well, if this doesn't work out, it's okay. Right. But play around with it. I've made this application. I made a video game with my son, kind of a mock Space Invaders game. That was, I made that with Gemini, but I think playing around with the applications that are out there to just try your hand at vibe coding is a real good way to start.
And the primary tool you're using today is Lovable?
Right. I'm using Lovable. You can access that via lovable.dev, but there are a lot of tools out there that do this. Bolt.new, Cursor, Windsurf, the Google AI Studio has it built in. So there's a lot of resources. Claude is another good one that people are using for vibe coding. So a lot of great ways for you to get, your toe dipped in the water on this one.
And something that I think stood out for me from what you talked about, like it was YouTube videos. You didn't invest in a expensive course, or you didn't spend money to learn how to do this stuff.
Right. There's one thing that I'm seeing really a lot out there, and that is information is free. And I feel like YouTube is a great way that's actually proven that statement for me. Is almost anything that you want to learn is available to you if you want to search for it. People are willing to share.
I would agree with that. And the other thing is the time investment, right? I think a lot of us are like so buried in our day-to-day, especially after all the updates we heard earlier. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening right now that time might be scarce to try these things. But I do believe with a few conversations, you could even have something built literally within a few minutes just by trying it. It may not be perfect, like whatever it is, but at least gives you the idea of what
Absolutely. I think that if you wanted to build something really just simple, just to kind of get yourself started, you could just set aside 30 minutes, have a conversation with your favorite large language model, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or something like that, and say, here's a problem that I have. Be real descriptive of it and say, what's a MVP product, minimum viable product that I could build using, the application of your choice, and just say, give me a prompt that can help me get started with this. And it'll get you started. You take that prompt and go into whatever it is that you want to build with. Like I said, I use Lovable, but I might have that conversation with ChatGPT. It'll give me the Lovable prompt, and I'll take that and go into Lovable and paste it and get started and see what happens. Because in a lunch break, you can definitely get started with something.
That's amazing. And so like Mealtastic, speaking of food and lunch break, was really, is the word gateway to what you're now doing within Resideo. And so Are you able to show us what you created there related to job architecture and job descriptions?
Right. So here's an example of something that, Mealtastic was definitely a gateway to show me what was possible and that I could do this, right? But this is one of the examples of how we're applying vibe coding in our work at Resideo. My team and I have built Match, which is a tool that uses our own job architecture, and we're able to take job descriptions. So imagine a manager creates a job description, says, I want to hire somebody for a role, but I don't really know how it fits into our organization, or I think it fits in this way, but I'd like some sort of confirmation. I can end up taking the job description that they have. I've actually grabbed one off of Indeed. So this is not a Resideo job, but we can just pretend that this is something that a manager handed off to me, and I can paste it in here. Now I can actually upload like a document if I'd like, but I've just taken this entry-level hardware engineer that I found on Indeed, and I'm going to go ahead and find out how does this fit into our organization based on the job description that I was given. So whether it's somebody from our talent team or somebody, a manager in the business. And based on the job description that I fed into it, it'll give me a summary of how it fits into the organization. Specifically, this is in our engineering function, hardware engineering sub-function. It talks about how it's, really an entry-level role. And I can read about this and say, okay, here's the job description that is a best fit given what I was given. The other good thing about this is it's actually given me a stacked rank list of other jobs that it thinks could be a decent fit. So maybe what I want isn't really an entry-level position. Maybe I really did an okay job writing it, but I really should have actually written it for somebody who has a little bit of experience. Maybe they don't need it. I can actually choose maybe an intermediate experience role and it will talk about kind of how this aligns, what are some of the considerations, and whether I choose the original role that it suggested or a different role. When I hit refine with this match, it'll end up taking the job description that I input, and it will tailor that job description using the original input and our leveling guide and our job architecture, and it will give me a better job description on the other side of that. So I'm going to just go ahead and show you using the number one suggestion that I had. Let's say it is an entry-level position. It's going to take me to the next stage where it's going to refine that job description, and it's going to put it in a format that I think is uniform across our organization and a best practice for our organization. So I have a job summary, I've got duties and responsibilities, required and preferred experience, and competencies and skills, all aligned to my architecture. If I want to validate that, I can click on this validate alignment, and it will give me more feedback, and it will tell me any areas where I have opportunity to improve it. I'll actually have some suggestions down here. I'm taking something that is pretty standard, but I can, so it doesn't have that. But let's say I put in, and all of this is modifiable. So let's just say I put in something like plans the company parties, right? Not probably a actual good responsibility for my hardware engineer, but maybe there's an individual that has that skill, and I'm trying to put that in there. It'll give me the feedback about how, on the duties and responsibilities, I'm actually getting a warning that there's actually a responsibility that's not really a good match for this type of a role, and it'll give me a suggestion to remove that irrelevant duty. So I can go ahead and say, you know what, actually, that's probably not a professional sort of duty that I want to incorporate, and I can rerun it and revalidate it.
Josh?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to make this?
The initial proof of concept, right, for this was pretty quick. But, with feedback and fine tuning and everything like that, we've been working on this for a little while. I will say that's one of the beautiful things about this tool. We actually officially rolled it out at Resideo just yesterday. And so this has gone through all of the cybersecurity and legal.
Applause button.
Thank you. But once we ended up gathering the feedback and everything like that, we were able to continue to fine tune it and everything like that. And I will say, this doesn't need to be done right now. This can still be something that we continue to iterate on and continue to work on building a better system as we get additional feedback.
So I have a lot of questions going through my head. So the first one is, I feel like a lot of organizations sometimes with IT resources, they're scarce right now.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to do some of these things or get this proof of concept ready or prove it out, talk to us more about that process for you.
So, first and foremost, I guess let's talk about kind of getting the generative AI tool approved, right? There's a lot, I think, of hesitancy in organizations to just go out and approve everything. We have an intake process. So I ended up going through that process to get Lovable approved. And that included, making sure I was familiar with and was able to present as a part of that, their privacy policies and those sorts of things. One of the most important features that our cybersecurity team wanted to have in place was the ability to make sure that it didn't train on your data. So our Lovable license that we have is a business license, which allows us to turn that off. So we don't train the model on our data. It's very important. But then also, as we build things, we needed to go through additional reviews just to make sure that what we built, now that also uses generative AI, meets the standards that we have both legally and from a cybersecurity standpoint.
That's hugely important. And then you also have all of your team working within a single, what do they call it, space or workspace?
A workspace, yeah. That's a really great feature about Lovable is the workspaces can be shared. So we have a license that we can invite up to 20 people. My team isn't more than 20 people, so that works great for us. And we can end up all working in the same workspace. So there's different projects that are going on right now on my team, making a global holiday calendar, making a compensation offer tool, of course, this one as well. And I expect that we will continue to build other things as we find solutions that we think the applications that we can build will help us solve.
How does the team feel about it? Are they excited? Are they scared AI is going to take their job? Like what's the feeling?
Yeah, not at all. I think the team is really excited about it. They, see the potential. They see the roadblocks that we might have had. Like you said, IT resources can be scarce, and we're not just using the generative AI tools to build applications. Sometimes it's communications resources that can also be, strapped across an organization. So we're using it to build up our communications, make different types of communications that we never made before, whether that's podcasts or videos, things like that. And so it's real empowering for our team.
How do you decide what goes from idea to proof of concept? What does the criteria look like there? What's the business case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that the bar has been lowered substantially with the fact that the pricing on these tools is very approachable, right? Mm-hmm. It was interesting because when Lovable first rolled out, there was actually a different way to actually use it. Mm-hmm. And you had to, if you wanted to have a back end, you had to tie to Supabase, and there was like a per project cost and everything like that. And so there was a little bit higher bar even on our team with kind of what projects we'd choose to work on based on the fact that we needed to consider all of the costs that went into it. But since Lovable has continued to make improvements and those sorts of things, the cost has come down dramatically. You can now use Lovable Cloud, which integrates a back end and the AI APIs, and it makes it so that, we are approving far more use cases just on the basis of, we're willing to take a small financial risk on it. And when I say small, I'm talking usually like $5 or $10 like total, right?
I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
That's a cup of coffee, not even a cup of coffee anymore.
Right. Yeah.
How do you handle then the governance of, the site? Like this came up at a conference I was at yesterday. They're like, we have these business analysts, they've started their own Lovable account, but like who owns it? And then the integrating into all of the different business processes.
Yeah. So I actually was at the World at Work conference last year, and they talked about, there were a couple of presenters that had talked about different ways of doing things. I don't know that we've got it totally figured out. One of the things that I liked that I heard best was depending on who is using it, they had an approval hierarchy that kind of was sized appropriate to the group that was using it. I think this was, I can't remember which of the organizations it was that was talking about it, but I thought the concept was spot on. For example, if it's something you're using in your own team, you might have the leader of that team approve it. If it's something that's used by the department, there might be a AI department overview area where these tools get reviewed. And if it's something that's used enterprise-wide, that might go to a larger committee. At Resideo, we actually, when we wanted to roll this out, we did another cybersecurity and legal review of the tools, or of this tool specifically, so that we could get it rolled out in a way that made everybody feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit, but how are you measuring success, or what do you think measuring success could look like in the future?
Yeah. That is also a really great question. For us, it's, what are we freeing up bandwidth and capacity to be able to do differently, right? And some of this might be a little bit harder to measure because, we're doing some things that we never did before. Mm-hmm. All right. So, but I think by focusing on, what are we able to do? How quickly can we put these tools out? How does it help us make better decisions? For this particular tool that I shared, mm-hmm. I think it will be a review of how are we, how are we looking from an organization standpoint in terms of how people are paid? Are they falling within the ranges? Because one of the biggest pain points I think that we've experienced historically is, people that might be falling outside of the range. And one of the biggest drivers of that is people not being appropriately leveled in their roles. And I believe that this will really help change that.
And I think when Frazine friend saw your tool, she was like, oh my gosh, this would have been so valuable for our H-1B cap season, right?
Yeah.
When they had to review all the job descriptions. And she was like, can't you make this available to everyone? Why is it just for Resideo?
Yeah, well, I will say at the World at Work conference, which is coming up in April, I will be doing a session where I'm going to do something. It's a little bit different than this, but it's pretty much kind of aligned to the same sort of objective of this. In 30 minutes, we're going to build something that basically does this.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I could see how people seeing this now are like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling behind. You are not behind. Just remember that. Just try and start. And I think that's the key. So much joy can come with it. And that's something that Josh and I share. And I hope it's okay. I would love to share something that I vibe coded.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. And I can show you a little bit behind the scenes too. And then maybe Josh can too. But he talked earlier of sometimes I flush out the idea that I have in ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT kind of gives me a rundown of what the requirements are. And I literally just copy and paste what came from the conversation in ChatGPT. And I put it into Lovable. And then it creates and designs, and we have a conversation here about how we want it to look. And for me, I was like, you know what? This cold outreach email, it's really hard. It could be from anyone, right? And there's a need for more authenticity today. So I literally created the mobility door roulette. I have no idea if you can hear it, but I wanted sound effects. And it just kind of walked people through. And it was silly, but yet it brought me joy in a way to see things in a different way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love it. And it looks like it was, a pretty short conversation that really, ended up delivering something usable for you.
Yeah. And it's not like, so other people departments in your organization use Lovable now for their own projects. Deborah, I think that question, I believe, is for Josh.
Yeah. This is definitely happening. It's the lovable.dev was listed in our approved generative AI tools. So there are other areas of our organization that are using it. I know I've had a conversation with our marketing department who's using Lovable to do some of their own projects in it. Yes, absolutely. Exciting.
Now, you and I, besides vibe coding, right? We also both share a love for music. So Tell us more. I hope that's okay with everybody at home, but I do believe music is a way to bring more joy into our workplaces now, with everything being so heavy. Like, think about ways you could incorporate a little jingle or song, whether it's to acknowledge someone or something like that. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I ended up kind of really playing around with AI tools and everything like that was through my love of music. I've been making music since, I don't know, I was a teenager for sure. And so one of the tools that I use right now is called Suno. And that's what I use to end up writing a lot of the music. And sometimes I write the music and I'll take what I put into Suno and then I'll make a song. Other times what I do is I will just use ChatGPT to come up with a concept and make a song. But after I make a song with Suno, sometimes I want to make it a little bit more interesting. I have an almost 3-year-old at home who loves videos, and she wanted me to make a music video. Well, she actually wanted me to make a song about a robot that danced and everything like that. And so I'd love to share with you what I ended up making to fill her request. Let's see here.
Here, I'll bring it up. Hang on.
Yeah.
It's right here. Got it. Oh, we got to remove something else from the stage first. Hang tight. Now, here we go.
All right. Oh, here we go.
Oh, Callie and I are overriding each other.
All right, here we go. Ready? Buckle in.
There's a little white robot rolling down the street. Purple glowing eyes and a clanky metal beat. Got a round little tummy that goes boop, boop, pop. When the music starts playing, that robot can't stop.
Now, I will say this. When she first heard the song, I didn't
Yeah.
have the music video. She was just like, eh. But then she saw the music video and she loves it now. So yeah, this gets played a lot in my house.
Music adds a lot. Are you ready for me to
Yeah.
show you mine?
I
You showed
would
me
love
yours.
to.
I'll show you mine.
I
Here
would
we
love
go.
to see. Yeah.
Are you drowning in emails? Is your RMC slow? Do you copy and paste till your fingers won't go? Where's my visa? Where's my cash? The employees all scream while you're stuck in Excel, and it isn't a dream. Switch to Benivo. Let the AI flow. One platform for everything. Watch the savings grow. We handle the payments, the tax, and the move with zero hidden fees. Get your team in the groove. Benivo, because your spreadsheet doesn't love you back.
No, it doesn't.
Benivo.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes.
It's just, oh, I got a question. What is the reasoning behind you putting your query into ChatGPT before putting into Lovable? And that's a really good question, because here's what happens when you're in Lovable, it uses credits. And so if you can conserve your credits by fleshing out the details before in a ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, it will save you those credits to focus your conversation on the actual building of the app, where you're going to be like, oh, I actually want to have it click back there. And you really get a sense too, when you use these tools, about what it takes to build good requirements. I don't know if you noticed that too, Josh.
I think you hit the mark on that one for sure, Lori. Yeah.
What else? Oh my gosh, we have extra time. I'm so excited.
Do you want to see some other fun things, or
Yes.
where would you like to go with this? So
Let's talk for a minute about your flash benefits, because I do believe it's important to point out, though, too, with AI and with all of these things, it's allowed you to also do some work, your passion, more passion stuff too, not just all full-time job stuff.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about is just making sure that people understand and can engage with their benefits. And so created Flash Benefits. I actually saw my co-founder, Christine, on the call as well. So I'm glad that she's here. Shout out to Christine. But one of the things that we've done is we've created a couple of resources for individuals to help them improve their benefits communications. And the first one that I'll share is an assessment that we've created. Let's go ahead and put it on the screen. So basically with 5 minutes and a few questions, you can go through the assessment and it will give you an AI generated assessment of your benefits and where you can improve. So if you go out to assessments.flashbenefits.io, please take the assessment, see how you're doing with your communications and some areas where you can end up improving. I think this is really an awesome resource. Additionally, we've created a tool, an application that can help you stop staring at a blank page and start creating your newsletters. I don't know how much time the average person spends on their benefits newsletter, but one of the great things with this resource is you can end up creating a newsletter in just a few clicks based on the month or based on a theme. And you can choose, I'm going to go into April here. I'm going to create a newsletter in just a few seconds. Essentially, it can propose a bunch of topics that will be relevant to the timing of your newsletter or the theme that you've selected. And then because of the way we've set up this resource, it will auto generate the content. I'm not going to go through all this, but you can see the selections that you can choose from. It's got almost a dozen here that you can select from. Once you collect the different topics that you want, it'll generate the newsletter, and then you can create images. We've got an image model connected to it, so it can end up really enhancing the way that the look of the newsletter is. I'll just give you a quick view into one of them. Here's an example for a fake company that we use a lot in our materials, Innovate Corp, but you can see there's a spring newsletter, talks about, wellness and allergies and, making sure to maximize your HSA account, those sorts of things. So Really great way, like I said, to stop looking at a blank page. And with this, you can still, do the manual edits and everything like that. Yeah, I'll keep on going if you want, but I
have a question. So
Yeah.
how long ago did you start vibe coding? Like you're like what, a year in, 8 months in? Like
it's funny because I thought it was a longer than actually it is, but we like this Mealtastic application that I showed off earlier. This one was made or created initially in May of 2005. So everything that I've done is within the last year. And it's funny because Mealtastic right now, I look at that and I think that's ancient. As AI timelines go, and that's not even a year old. So.
I think I built something just over a year ago. And what's interesting too is how much Lovable has changed. Like before, it was really hard to connect it to a database.
Yeah.
Now you can connect it to a database, or it was hard for it to send an email. Because I think I made like something that would be like an Evite, but I made my own, and now it can send emails. So I just feel like we can, whatever you built before, they keep adding features or secure, whatever it is.
A lot more ways to connect it to things that you're already using, and yeah really great. I think Lovable should put us on the payroll.
I totally agree with you.
Talking about it, but yeah.
Where's our referral codes, right? It would be great. I would love to invite everyone back to the stage now because we have a few minutes left. And I always say the community discussion, the reactions, the questions. I'd love to hear from Tally and Meredith.
Yeah, that was amazing, Lori. Lori, Josh, you've been great. I think someone here has something to say to you.
Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button.
Yeah, Brian made it. Version of Brian. We got him.
Let's bring also Raj.
Yeah, I think this is great. And I'll tell you, I think the question that I hear continuously is, how can I use this in my everyday role? What can I do? And I mean, I think there's so many uses for it, but it's great that Josh's company has said, hey, we're embracing this. This isn't going away. And as an organization, we need to embrace it, put our parameters around it, but let's give tools to our employees that can streamline their efficiencies and, really help generate some creative ideas, because you have creativity in here, but a lot of time it's hard to do that manual work, and then you get distracted into something else. This gives you a way to do that. I thought it was really cool. Love the videos too.
It's also about, and I think you mentioned it, Josh, in our pre-show conversation, it's about pain points. So just the other day I had a pain point. I was just discussing it with Gemini, and you were talking about Lovable. I know Lori's working a lot with Claude. There's different tools in the market, but in the end, you can find your own engine that works best for you, and then just discuss with it. Because for me, for example, the best solution I found was actually Google Script, but it walked me through the script building, and it was amazing. So I didn't even have to build anything external.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Raj, what are your thoughts?
I just thought that was just so awesome. And it is really quite exciting to see sort of the ways in which people are using AI and automation. And I know that before Shayla, we were talking about AI in crisis management, and, the way that could potentially speed things up with information, and being able to help navigate risk identification. So I think, it's certainly space for sort of making things a bit more efficient. Now, obviously, I think one of my worries is, source, but that again is something when you know your prompts and you can set the parameters with AI, it's quite an exciting time for sure.
I'm not sure you mentioned the AI playbook for crisis response, which you built, Lori, based on Raj's crisis management response. But we're getting to the end of the show, and thank you, Lori, for another wonderfully hosted show. Next week, we're going to have the last in the 3 series of Lori Ignite, Lori's AI trainings. So be sure to register and join us.
I'm very excited. Thank you all for such a great day.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.